passage of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Colorado arise?
Madam Speaker, I ask for recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House is voting on H.R. 3 dealing with federal funding of abortion. David Hawkins of CQ Roll Call's Daily Briefing writes, this is a bill that would permanently ban all manner of federal funding, including tax breaks or subsidies for insurance plans to pay even directly for almost all abortions. Locally raised D.C. tax revenue would be subject to the same restrictions. He writes, the current annually extended exceptions for pregnancies that result from rape or incest or that endanger a woman's life would remain. This is the vote on final passage, 5-minute vote, and it should be the last recorded vote of the day.
On this vote, the yeas are 251, the nays are 175. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. What purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns to meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Without objection. The chair lays before the House the following personal request.
Leave of absence is requested for Mr. Bilirakis of Florida for today and for Mrs. Emerson of Missouri for Monday, May 2nd and the balance of the week.
Without objection, the requests are granted. The chair will entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. Hey, I gotta go. What purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to pay tribute to all those affected by the devastating storms that ripped through Tennessee and 12 other states last week. My thoughts and prayers are with the families who lost loved ones and with those that must rebuild their lives after this terrible natural disaster. Just as the people of Tennessee came together following last year's floods, we will do so again. With heavy hearts, we will overcome our great loss with greater strength and renewed sense of community. I would also like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the volunteers and rescue workers involved in the disaster relief efforts. Even in the dark hours, the efforts of Americans like these should give us all cause to hope. In the days ahead, we will work together to ensure that our communities have the resources needed to rebuild. I have complete faith that we will emerge stronger and better than ever before. And, Madam Speaker, my prayers go to those family members in our state and others who've lost loved ones. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Are there any more 1-minute requests? For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor William Bill Schultz. Bill is an educator who has dedicated over 3 decades, specifically 34 years, to teaching in Maine, New Hampshire, and New York. Upon retirement, he has dedicated his energies and talents to other retirees. Bill was a leader in the labor movement and served 2 terms as president of Niskayunis Teachers Association in my congressional district. Serving 8 years as president of Retiree Council 12 of the New York State United Teachers Association, Bill was influential in organizing that council. Bill's leadership, dedication, compassion, and knowledge have had a profound influence on the lives of the students he has taught, the retirees for which he has advocated, and the friends he has made along the way. In 1921, John Cotton Dana said, and I quote, "Who dares to teach must never cease to learn." It is in this spirit that Bill will be honored later this month. I commend and congratulate him on all of his efforts and hope his service and dedication can stand as a model and inspiration for countless others. After all, our future and our children's future are only as good as those who teach them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back to my time.
The gentleman yields back. Are there any more 1-minute requests? For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We had a hearing yesterday in the Judiciary Committee Attorney General of the United States came before us, and one of the things we discussed was the fact that in 2008, toward the end of the year, there was the biggest, most important terrorist funding case that was ever tried, conviction of all 5 defendants on 108 counts, and now this administration has dismissed and is not going to pursue the evidence that the trial judge said was there to make a prima facie case against the co-conspirators. Instead, you can go to the White House website and find that their Deputy National Security Advisor is thanking the President of the Islamic Society of North America, which was one of the unindicted co-conspirators, for his wonderful help in the White House and the great prayer he gave the year before. It's time to get foxes out of the hen house. Let's hold people responsible who want to destroy our way of life. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Are there any 1-minute requests? Purpose to the gentleman from New Jersey rise.
I just have to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objections.
Mr. Speaker, I want to rise today to just thank my colleagues for voting so overwhelmingly for H.R. 3, the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act. America today is solidly pro-life, and the trend line tangibly improves by the year. On public funding, a supermajority of well over 60% oppose public funding of abortion. Clearly, Americans get it. There is nothing compassionate, benign, or nurturing about abortion. Abortion methods, the actual deed of dismemberment, chemical poisoning, or suction is an act of violence against children. Abortion also hurts women. Earlier today in the Capitol, we heard from Nancy Tanner, a woman from Silent No More Awareness Campaign, who eloquently urged passage of H.R. 3. Ms. Tanner spoke of her abortion and the emotional agony that she has endured, and noted that well over 10,000 women have come forward and now have spoken out publicly against abortion. Each and every one of those women have had at least one abortion themselves, and they talk of the ongoing and enduring agony of that abortion.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Supporting the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act.
The gentleman yields back. Are there any more 1-minute requests? For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise? Without objections.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I drove to the airport to come out here this week, I recognized that gasoline was at $3.86 a gallon in my district. And the last time we got to these levels was almost 2.5, 3 years ago in the summer of 2008. And we, at that time, came up with an all-of-the-above energy plan, a plan that recognizes that what we need to do is expand production in the United States. We need to concentrate on conservation. We need to incentivize new forms of energy. But first and foremost, in order to get us over the bridge, we need to make certain that we utilize responsibly resources that have been given to this great country by our Creator. We need to offshore exploration, onshore exploration, clean coal technology, oil shale, all of the things that the American people know will decrease not just the price of gasoline, but will decrease our reliance on foreign oil and make this country safer and the world safer. Let's get to work. All of the above energy plan on behalf of the American people. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Are there any more 1-minute requests? For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Address the House for 1 hour.
Without objections. The gentleman will suspend. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Brown, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, what has become a time-honored tradition, the President and my Democrat colleagues that are here in Congress find it more convenient and politically expedient to make targets of energy companies. These are companies who invest their own capital and resources to increase our country's energy supply and the security of our nation. They want nothing more to operate in a free market environment without excessive government regulations. However, in a move to deflect the spotlight from this administration's own failings and the Democrat Party's own failings and their incompetent policies, this administration and many in Congress find it easier to attack the success of the energy companies than to actually confront the challenges that we face, often espousing policies to increase government interference in the marketplace that do more harm than good. Recently, companies like Koch Industries, which employs more than 10,000 people in my home state of Georgia, contributing more than $700 million to our state's economy, along with tens of millions in community and environmental philanthropic efforts, have come under attack by several Democrats in this body and this administration just because Koch's work and success provides for an easy red meat target to throw to their radical environmental friends. It's also a sad state of affairs when other energy companies actually post a positive profit report, even though most of these profits go back into more energy exploration as well as clean energy development. I'm also sure that you won't hear many attacks on how those profits help boost the retirement accounts of millions of Americans and put more into our struggling economy than any government stimulus program has or could. According to the new Washington Post, ABC's news survey out today, more than 7 in 10 Americans are suffering financial hardship from the skyrocketing gas prices. In fact, we've got a chart here tonight, the first one in the series. This is the gas prices, average retail prices in America when Barack Obama took office. The average price at that time was $1.84 per gallon, just as recently as January of 2009, a little over 2 years ago. Look what's happened. As of April the 25th of this year, the average price per gallon was $3.88 a gallon. Average price 2 years ago, $1.84, now $3.88. $2 higher, over twice. It's over doubled in just 2 years' period of time. Gas prices don't just affect the price at the pump. I was talking to a member just a few minutes ago, and she was telling me that she just fueled her pickup truck, and it cost her over $100 to fill the gas tank of her pickup truck. She and her husband own a ranch. They're active ranchers out west. Never before has she had to pay $100 to fill the tank of her vehicle. And I filled the tank of mine, and it was almost $90 in my GMC Yukon that I've used to make house calls as a medical doctor. This is unsustainable. Higher gas prices impact our grocery bills, job opportunities, travel plans, and thousands of other decisions that businesses and families make. In fact, according to an analyst from the Cameron Hanover, every penny increase in the price of gas costs consumers, American citizens, consumers, more than $4 million per day. 1 penny increase costs consumers over $4 million per day. And folks, who are hurt the most by this? People who are hurt the most are poor people and people who are on limited incomes, our senior citizens. And as the cost of fuel and gas and oil go up because of the misplaced policies of this administration, this winter, fuel prices are going to be out of the roof. In fact, the President said, while we were talking about his cap and trade bill not long ago, he said that energy prices would, to use the President's words, would necessarily skyrocket for his policies. Necessarily skyrocket. Under President Obama, the cost of energy has skyrocketed. And that's what he's said in a national speech. The national average price of gasoline, as I just mentioned, was $1.84 when President Obama took office. Today it is $3.96. Rising gasoline prices are hurting families and small businesses. They're costing jobs. In fact, I just talked to a manager of a restaurant in my hometown of Athens, Georgia, just this last weekend. And he was telling me that when he orders food for his restaurant, his suppliers are adding a fuel surcharge onto the cost of groceries, food for his restaurant. And that's happening in all the grocery stores, and that's happening all across this country. It's threatening our economy and our economic recovery. While the new House majority is taking steps to address gas prices and help create jobs with the American Energy Initiative, the Obama administration's anti-energy policies are driving up prices, and they're threatening our economy by blocking American energy production. We've had a 16% decrease in American energy production under this administration. It's 16% lower than it was projected to be, and future projections show continued decreases in domestic production and more reliance upon foreign imports for our energy sources, particularly for gas and oil. And we're getting those energy resources from countries that hate us, that hate our American free enterprise system, that hate the liberty we have here in this country. More than a 200,000 barrel per day decrease in Gulf Coast energy production. This is according to the Energy Information Administration's March 2011 short-term energy outlook. Production from the Gulf of Mexico is expected to fall by 240,000 240,000 barrels per day in 2011, and a further 200,000 barrels per day in 2012. A reduction. 27 billion barrels of oil are under lock and key in Alaska. According to a recent Fox News report, the EPA's refusal to grant permits for energy production in Alaska's outer continental shelf has limited access to an estimated 27 billion barrels of oil. With Alaskan oil production already decreasing by 7% annually, continued delays could force the Trans-Alaska Pipeline to shut down. What's that going to do to our cost of gasoline, heating oil, natural gas, and all of our other energy sources? What's that going to do to the cost of food? It's all going to skyrocket. More than 40 American energy projects have been stalled by this administration. As the House Natural Resources Committee notes, 10 months after the Obama administration's official moratorium on American energy ended, over 40 projects remain stalled, and people are left without work. This administration's energy policy is killing jobs in the Gulf Coast as well as all over this country. We're sending American jobs overseas. 12 rigs have already left the Gulf. Before we change, let me go to this quote here from Michael Bromwich, the chief regulator of U.S. offshore drilling. Even if we permitted the hell out of everything tomorrow, every pending permit, some permits that haven't even been filed yet, it would not have a material effect on gas prices, Bromwich said. That's the simple, clear reality. Well, the simple, clear truth, the simple truth, is Michael Bromwich is absolutely wrong. And in fact, as soon as the first drill bit starts hitting dirt or ocean floor, you will see oil prices plummet in this country, in my opinion. Why? Because OPEC will get a message that we're going to produce our own energy resources here in America. Mr. Speaker, I submit any country that is not energy independent, if it cannot produce its own energy resources, if it cannot produce its own food and its own clothing, is not a secure nation. And the American people need to know that we are not a secure nation today. And it's because of policies of this administration that are making us less secure. We need to go in the opposite direction of the direction we're going today, that this administration's taken us. According to James W. No, Executive Director of the Shallow Water Energy Security Coalition, at least 12 offshore rigs have already departed the Gulf of Mexico, resulting in a significant and precipitous reduction in domestic employment and energy production. In January, the moratorium forced 7 oil rigs to abandon the Gulf and head overseas, costing American jobs and forcing the U.S. to import more foreign oil. These rigs have left. You see where they've gone? Nigeria, Egypt, the Congo, Brazil, French Guiana. They won't be coming back. Thousands of American jobs left with them. In fact, it's as many as 12,000 American jobs have been lost, and more than 36,000 jobs are at risk. I hear my Democrat colleagues talking about it's jobs, jobs, jobs. In fact, we heard that just today in the Science Committee. One of my Democrat colleagues talked about jobs are the #1 issue. Well, she's absolutely right. But it's her party's policy that are running jobs all overseas. It's this administration policies that are making these rigs leave the Gulf of Mexico and go to Nigeria and Egypt and Congo and Brazil, French Guiana. According to a study at Louisiana State University, monetary economist Dr. Joseph Mason, the Obama administration's de facto ban, and it is a ban, he says he's lifted the moratorium, but they're not putting out the permits. It's a de facto ban on American energy production, could cost as many as 24,532 jobs in the Gulf Coast and 36,137 jobs nationwide. By the administration's own admission, the first 6 months of the official moratorium alone has resulted in as many as 12,000 American jobs have been lost. They're gone. They've left the Gulf Coast. They've gone to other areas. They've gone to produce energy. If you look at this chart, in the Middle East, in Africa, South America, and Brazil. In fact, the President just sent billions of dollars to Brazil for them to produce their energy and create Brazilian jobs at the cost of American energy and American jobs. It makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. In fact, recently, during a trip to Brazil in March, President Obama pledged to, quote, to help with technology and support to develop the Brazilian oil reserves so that America could become one of Brazil's, quote, quoting Barack Obama himself, Brazil's best customers. He wants us to become Brazil's best customer. How about those American jobs that he is killing and his administration is killing? His Energy Secretary, Dr. Chu, a couple of years ago said, we have to find some way to make gasoline prices in America the same as they are in Europe. We'll talk about that in a bit. And remind the American people that the President himself said that energy prices under his policies that he's promoting would necessarily skyrocket. He wants Americans' energy prices to skyrocket, putting people out of jobs, costing all these thousands of jobs, costing our economy millions and millions and trillions of dollars in all probability, eventually. Certainly billions. He just gave or loaned to Brazil $2 billion to produce jobs and produce oil in Brazil instead of producing oil in the Gulf Coast and off Alaska. And his EPA just denied the energy production off Alaska. It makes no sense. According to stories from the Gulf Coast residents shared at a recent Natural Resources Committee hearing, the President's policies already are helping make good on his pledge, with one offshore boat company reporting that his, quote, employer is sending 100 vessels overseas to Brazil to keep them working, Brazilians working. With those transfers go many American jobs, unquote. This administration's policies are destroying jobs. Democrat Party policies under the former Speaker, Ms. Pelosi, the Majority Leader in the Senate, Harry Reid, are destroying jobs, destroying our economy. And they want more of the same. They want more stimulus, more government, less American jobs in the private sector, less American energy production. Mr. Speaker, the American people need to know very clearly. They need to know the simple truth. They deserve the truth. That the policies created by this administration, the policies created under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, are building a bigger government, but destroying our energy. They're building a bigger government, even higher prices for housing in Washington, D.C., to destroy jobs in the private sector all across the country. And the energy policies are going to harm the most vulnerable Americans, poor people, people on limited incomes, our senior citizens. Recently, President Obama and Washington Democrats trotted out two blame-shifting strategies that Democrats have tried unsuccessfully to use in the past to deflect blame for their failed anti-energy policies. Just last month, Democrats recycled their so-called use it or lose it argument that has already been debunked as nothing more than a hoax. It's political fodder that they are utilizing. I've heard it in our Natural Resources Committee. I've heard it on the floor of the House. The American people are sick and tired of this kind of political dialogue. Americans are demanding all over this country, not only in the 10th District in Georgia, my district, not only in the state of Georgia, but Americans all over the country deserve for this nation to be energy independent. They're crying out for energy independence. The Carter administration established the Energy Department to make us energy independent as a nation. The Department of Energy has failed miserably in that task, and has failed miserably in that task under both Democrat as well as Republican administrations. Now President Obama is trying to shift blame to oil speculators, just as he did back in 2008. And this is in spite of the fact that, as the Washington Post, Jennifer Rubin notes, it is, to quote her, quote, the administration's own policies that are contributing to yet another drain on the wallets of average Americans, unquote. Washington Post has not been particularly a conservative newspaper that has promoted conservative policies. But that's what Jennifer Rubin said. The administration's own policies are contributing to yet another drain on the wallets of average Americans. And she is absolutely correct in that assessment. And I commend her for saying so. Earlier this month, the House passed the Energy Tax Prevention Act, H.R. 910, to stop the Obama administration from imposing a backdoor national energy tax that will further drive up gas prices. President Obama says he's going to veto that legislation, proving that he won't let skyrocketing gas prices get in the way of his administration's job-crushing anti-energy agenda, regardless of the cost to American families and small businesses. I've got a small business that is in the timber business in Lincoln County, Georgia. The owner of that business recently told me he parked all of his trucks because he cannot afford to put fuel in those trucks. And that has cost several jobs in Lincoln County. Lincoln County has a unemployment rate that's way, way higher than the national average. In fact, the state of Georgia's unemployment rate, I think just recently was reported to be over 10%. This administration's anti-energy policies are crushing jobs, crushing small businesses, crushing family budgets. And it's anti-American. Well, House Republicans are making strong efforts to create jobs and lower fuel prices in this country. Recently, CNN did a poll. They found that 7 in 10 Americans support increased offshore drilling for oil and gas. 7 in 10. I wonder about the other 3 in those 10. 45% strongly favor. Here's a question. They ask how Americans feel about increased drilling for oil and natural gas offshore in U.S. waters. And here's how they responded. 45% said that they strongly favor us doing increased drilling for our own oil and gas in the Gulf Coast offshore. 24% mildly favor. 16% strongly oppose, and 15% mildly oppose. Now that 15% and 16%, I wonder if they've looked at their checkbook. I wonder if they've looked at the cost of bread and milk, and cabbage, and potatoes in the grocery store. Because the prices of those goods that we all depend upon when we go to the grocery store all are markedly affected by the cost of gas and oil in this country. Increasing American energy production will help create new jobs, and it addresses the rise in gas prices. And Americans know it. With the House prepared to vote on legislation to boost offshore energy production, as I said, 7 in 10 Americans support offshore drilling for our oil and natural gas. It belongs to us. It belongs to the American people. And we're being prohibited from tapping into that by this administration and Democrat Party policy. Implementing a comprehensive plan to build a more stable supply of petroleum from our own North American resources, along with reforms that end litigation, the endless litigation, and reveal policies that artificially inflate cost, will provide immediate relief to the price of gasoline. The market knows that more energy means lower prices. When President Bush removed the executive moratorium on offshore drilling in 2008, as a good example, crude oil futures by the speculators fell more than $9 almost immediately. It's not speculators that's causing the rise in cost of oil. It's not the speculators who are causing the rise of cost of Americans when they go to fill their cars and pickup trucks. It's failed policies by the Obama administration, failed policies by Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and their cronies here in the House and in the Senate. We can create good jobs. we can insulate the economy from energy price shocks by actively producing our own energy resources here in this country. And we can do that. We must do that while we're good stewards of our environment. Repealing federal mandates and the prohibitions that artificially drive up the cost of gasoline and stopping the EPA's backdoor energy tax. They're trying to implement their, what I call tax and trade, by EPA edict in a dictatorial manner when they could not pass that bill through Congress in the last Congress, and by halting the President's drilling permatorium, as some of us call it. It has been described. And unlike some of us call it, it has been described. And unlocking our own energy resources that God has given us here in America, both on and offshore, all these will help alleviate the pain at the pump, the pain at the grocery store, the pain at every goods and service, even the pain in the doctor's office, and the pain of all the higher energy costs, and the pain of all the increased cost of every goods and service in this country. Through the American Energy Initiative, House Republicans are actively working to increase American energy production in order to do a number of things: to lower the cost of gasoline, to create American jobs, to generate revenue to help reduce the debt and this deficit that's unsustainable, and to strengthen our national security by decreasing our dependence upon foreign energy, particularly foreign oil. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, I believe very firmly that if a country is not energy independent, it is not a secure nation. And we are not secure today. We must make America energy independent. And we do that by developing our own energy resources, all of our energy resources. Not only oil and gas, but coal. We need to develop clean coal technology. We need to look at alternative energy resources such as wind and solar and waves and all the things. We need to have research and development on nuclear energy and all the things that are critical for us to be energy independent as a nation. Republican bills would create 250,000 jobs short-term and 1.2 million jobs long-term, according to Louisiana State University's Joseph Mason. We've got to create jobs. And the energy policies that this administration and our Democratic colleagues are promoting are killing jobs, not creating them. Republican policies want to create jobs. Under Republican bills that we have introduced, one of which is H.R. 1230, the Restarting American Offshore Leasing Now Act, we would expand American energy production and create jobs by requiring the Secretary of the Interior to conduct oil and natural gas lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico, as well as offshore Virginia, that have been delayed and canceled by this administration, by the Obama administration. H.R. 1229, Putting the Gulf Back to Work Act, will end the Obama administration's de facto drilling moratorium in a safe, responsible, transparent manner. And it puts thousands of Americans back to work, increasing American energy production to help address the rising gasoline prices that Americans are facing every single day. Every single day we see gas prices jump. And H.R. 1231, reversing President Obama's Offshore Moratorium Act will lift the President's ban on new offshore drilling by requiring the administration to move forward on American energy production in areas containing the most oil and natural gas resources. Many organizations support the three bills I just mentioned: U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Americans for Tax Reform, National Taxpayers Union, Americans for Prosperity, Citizens Against Government Waste, Americans for Limited Government, National Federation of Independent Businesses, the 60+ Association, American Trucking Association, and I can go on and on and on. And Gulf organizations are supporting passage of the Outer Continental Shelf legislation. I can list organization after organization. I won't continue with those right now because I've been joined by a good friend, a stalwart on this issue, who I think has probably done as much or more than any other Republican member of Congress to try to help make us energy independent as a nation, to help us create jobs here in America. My dear friend, John Shimkus. I yield the
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Brown. It is great to be with you. And I appreciate the introduction. You're too kind. But one thing I do know, if you want to create good-paying jobs, it's in the fossil fuel industry. And during this recession, two of the biggest job engines for organized labor is the production of a new supercritical coal-fired power plant. Thousands of building trade workers building this power plant, and hundreds of people who will be working this power plant and mining the coal with great wages and superb benefits. So if we want good, high-paying jobs in this country, the fossil fuel industry is one sector that can do that. The other major job engine next to my congressional district is an expansion of a refinery in Wood River. Actually, it's in Congressman Costello's district, but we're right next to each other, the ConocoPhillips refinery. Thousands of employees, a $2 billion project to help crack the oil that would come from the Canadian oil sands. And so you have thousands of jobs right now. You have another supply, decreasing our reliance on imported crude oil from an ally with North American energy. Great wages, great benefits, secure jobs, fossil fuel industries. I'm just amazed at the continued attack on that sector by my friends on the other side, and the whole debate about what drives the cost of energy. It's a simple formula. We all learned it in basic economics and accounting: supply and demand. If you want to lower the cost of the good, you have to increase the supply. And we continue to demand more. In fact, we're going to demand 30% more in electricity generation by 2030. And if we don't marry that with an increased electricity generation, guess what? We're going to have higher costs. Same is true with liquid fuels. And so we're in a very exciting time in this country, because for the first time we really can make the argument that we could be independent of imported crude oil by using what we're proposing as an all-the-above energy strategy. Let these energy commodities compete for our purchase. One example is we dropped with some friends on the other side is an open fuel strategy, so that anybody can use anything when they pull up to the pump. But another manner in which you do that is you continue to allow all comers to compete for electricity. And you don't allow government to stifle the electricity generation or the liquid fuel markets. So many of us have seen these, and I'll go quickly. I know you've got some issues you want to talk about. But in an all-of-the-above strategy, we say all the above. If you want to use solar and wind, great. That's part of all the above. Small portion of electricity generation does nothing for liquid fuels, liquid transportation fuels, but it might add 3%, of electricity. OCS, we got to be there. We've got new excitement in the Marcellus Shale. That's got to be an exciting new venue that can go for electricity generation and for liquid fuels. We've got fuel from coal, not just electricity generation, but DOD South Africa for years has been turning coal, carbon-based coal, into liquid transportation fuel or aviation fuel. Or, as you know, I'm very supportive of the biodiesel provisions. It all comes down to this: jobs. When we continue to add additional regulations on the fossil fuel industries, just what happened to these miners? They all lost their jobs. 1,000 of them in one mine. The attack by this administration and my colleagues on the other side on the fossil fuel industry has to stop. And I know we're joined with another of my colleagues. I'll end with this because you hear on the floor quite a bit from Martha. I just want to pose a question. If you raise taxes on a commodity good, how does that lower its price? If you raise the tax on a commodity, how does that lower the price to the consumer? But it cannot, and it will not. It will only add the price of that energy. Thank you for letting me join you, and I'll return the time to you.
Thank you, Mr. Shimkus. Appreciate it. I appreciate your efforts over many Congresses since I've been here. I'm in my third Congress, as you know, and you've been a stalwart fighting this issue all along. And I appreciate the hard work that you've done for the people in your district in Illinois and for this nation. So thank you so much for what you've been doing. I've also been joined tonight for another friend of mine who's been very active in this issue because he's from Louisiana. He has been on the floor many times talking about the moratorium and the permittatorium that has been going on, as some have called it. This cost people jobs in his home state of Louisiana, and so I recognize my good friend Steve Scalise from New Orleans.
Well, I thank the gentleman from Georgia for yielding. I appreciate the hard work that you've been doing for years, as I have, on this issue. I appreciate the comments from my colleague from Illinois who just talked about just what's happening here. And I think as you look, in the last 2 weeks we were in our districts, and I got the opportunity to go through parts of my district. And when you talk to people about what's happening in this country with the economy, the biggest question that comes up beyond the short-term issues of the economy and jobs is the high price of gasoline. And just why is it that right now people are paying almost $4, if not $5 in some parts of the country, $5 a gallon for gasoline, and we're still not even into the heart of the summer. And it's clear as people look, it's very clear that the policies of this administration that have completely shut off our ability to produce, go and explore for and produce energy in America is one of the main contributing factors to this high price of gasoline. And of course, you don't have to go far in South Louisiana to see the direct impacts because, as my colleague from Georgia just pointed out, not only the moratorium that was imposed about a year ago, but the permitorium that we're still experiencing today, where the administration won't let our people go back to work exploring safely for energy. People that had absolutely nothing to do with the BP explosion in the Deepwater Horizon. People that were in much deeper waters, drilling safely back then, that now cannot go back to work. We've lost over 13,000 jobs in the energy industry in South Louisiana in the last year, specifically because of President Obama's policies that have shut those areas down. Literally run thousands of jobs, 13,000 by the White House's estimates. We think the number is much higher, but I'll just use the White House's numbers. 13,000 people in this country who have lost their job in the energy industry, high-paying jobs, by the way, that have gone to foreign countries. We've tracked some of these deep-water rigs that have left. Of course, the President goes to Rio de Janeiro a few weeks ago and brags that he wants to drill in Brazil. What I would suggest is, Mr. President, let's drill in America safely where we know there are billions of barrels of oil here in this country where we can create thousands of high-paying jobs, generate billions of dollars that the Federal Treasury would take in because of all that economic activity and the royalties that would be paid by those oil companies that would lower our deficit. And yet, no, the President says, we want to shut you down and put your people out of work, but we want to go and spend our resources in drilling in Brazil. This is the backward policy that this administration has pursued that has gotten us to this point where we're paying over $5 in some places in this country, $4, close to $4 in my district for a gallon of gasoline, and we're not even in the heart of the summer. And so then when you look at what the administration's plan is, I mean, clearly our plan is we want to let our people go back to work, exploring and drilling safely for energy, creating thousands of good jobs, bringing all that tax revenue into this country to lower our deficit. But the President's answer is, now you would think maybe he'd be agreeing with us on this. This should be a bipartisan issue. There is bipartisan support, by the way, to do what my colleague from Georgia and I are talking about. But the President does not only he doesn't support our plan, but the President's proposal is to raise taxes on American energy. He goes out, you know, and I mean, I guess every time he speaks, he wants to go and beat up on an American industry, and right now it's the oil companies. Well, frankly, the oil companies that are out there right now, many of them are producing in other countries. But our local producers, the small businesses, these aren't the big guys. This is the small businesses that are barely hanging on by a thread, struggling to survive, that he would be shutting down by raising taxes. His plan is to raise $22 billion in taxes on American energy production. Now, his plan, by the way, coincidentally doesn't apply to foreign countries. So, you know, when he goes to Rio and says drill in Brazil, his package that he's actually asked Congress to pass, and I sure hope we don't pass it, but his package not only raises taxes on American energy, that same tax increase doesn't apply to the drilling in Brazil or in Saudi Arabia or some of these other Middle Eastern countries who use that money to do things that are counterproductive to American energy, not only American energy security, but our homeland security. And so the President would say, raise $22 billion in taxes on American energy production, which, by the way, runs even thousands more jobs out of our country, and increases our dependence on Middle Eastern oil. This is counterproductive policy, but that's the President's answer to high gas prices, is to raise taxes on American energy, which means higher prices at the pump. And by the way, we're already paying too much at the pump. Gas prices have more than doubled since President Obama took office. It's not just bad luck that gives us high gas prices. It's bad policy that comes out of Washington, D.C. And that's why I really appreciate the gentleman from Georgia bringing us here tonight, but also the legislation that we'll be voting on tomorrow that actually starts to address this problem and say, you know what? If people in America want to safely explore and produce energy here in America, we're going to let them do that. We're going to let them go to work here so that we don't send those jobs and those billions of dollars to countries like Brazil and even worse, Middle Eastern countries who want to do us harm. So clearly the policy impacts the price of gas we're paying at the pump. We've got to reverse these policies that make absolutely no sense that are coming out of this White House and get back to an all-of-the-above strategy that actually allows us to utilize our resources here in America in a safe way that produces thousands of good high-paying jobs and brings billions more dollars into the Federal Treasury to pay down the national debt. And with that, I yield back to my friend from Georgia.
I'd like to ask my friend a question before.